Yo guys, what's going on? It's SEANO here, and today we're going to be looking at Mage for Classic Fresh Phase 1. I know what you're thinking, it's all the same as 2019, so you don't need to know anything else. Well, actually that's not strictly true. There's been a few changes in this version of Classic, including dual spec, which completely changes the dynamic and the meta. So in this guide we're going to go through everything you need to know for Mage in PvE. This guide is perfect for beginners, but I've also included timestamps, so if you want to skip ahead to specific points you can do that, but I highly recommend that you watch the whole guide. Before we start, if you're not subscribed to me, please consider subscribing, as I do loads of Mage content and you'll find a lot of value in my channel. I also just want to give a massive shout out to my newest members on the channel, Cal and Tony, who have joined this month. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, it means so much. So the first thing we're going to look at is races. I get asked this question all the time, whether it's through Discord or Whisper. What is the best race for Mage? Well, firstly, this isn't going to make a massive game-breaking impact, but if you do want to be a sweat and aim for that top 1%, then there is a little difference between each of the classes. For Alliance, you'll want to be a Gnome. Gnome has 5% increased total intelligence, which gets better with gear. So for example, in full Phase 1 best in slot, Gnomes have 315 more mana and 0.35% more crit than humans. They also have Escape Artists, which is really good in all scenarios, but especially for PvP. The best thing going for humans is the reputation increase, which will save you grinding time, and is especially good for TPC in the future, which is an expansion that's massively about reputation. So in summary, for Alliance, Gnome wins for both PvE and PvP. For Horde, the difference is more marginal than Alliance. Troll is the best in PvE due to berserking, but Undead is the winner in PvP because of both Will of the Forsaken and Cannibalize. They're very good tools. Undead also wins for the best looking mage race of all time, and regardless of what Troll has to offer, I will always pick Undead if I'm Horde. In summary, just play what you enjoy, but if you really want to min-max, you can always go Gnome or Troll, but remember you can buy things like consumables that make you a human at any time if you're not happy with your class animations. Now to look at professions. The best mage professions are tailoring and engineering, hands down. Tailoring has some of the best gear in the game, and engineering has consumes which are great in both PvE. They're also almost essential for PvP. Again, you can go for any profession you want, but the difference becomes even bigger than races, and with so many gold farms available for mages, there shouldn't really be a need for any other profession. The only exception could be if you are the guild enchanter or something like that. Any other professions, I'd just recommend getting an alt for. Okay, now we are going to look at some talents. The first spec we're going to cover is Frost AoE for dungeons. Basically, you'll want to use this spec when you are running dungeons if you're going Frost. This is a very safe spec. You will not die. You have decent-ish single target damage with improved Frostbolt, and you have very good control with improved Blizzard. It's basically a Frost spec for dungeons. There will be links to these specs in the description below if you want to see them. The next spec is the Frostfire spec for dungeons. This is very powerful, extreme AoE, absolutely tons of damage. You just have to be careful with threat, but this has uncapped potential. So the way this spec works is you're using Shatter with a combination of Flame Strike and Blast Wave. What you would do is let the tank gather up some threat, then you would Frost Nova with a Flame Strike, batch it with a Blast Wave, and it does absolutely tons and tons of damage. After this, you can of course use Cone of Cold with Ice Shards as well, which will do big damage as well. Now the spec also has very strong single target damage. It's often I leave the dungeon with 40% of the overall damage because the AoE is strong, but I also beat everyone on single target as well. You can precast Pyro, use Combustion with Fireballs, and of course you have Blast Wave and Fire Blast to finish them off. Now there is a slight variant to this spec which is slightly safer if you're having threat issues. You can drop Combustion, and you can take Cold Snap, and you can take one out of Ice Shards to take Ice Block. This will allow you to Ice Block if things get too heavy, but you lose Combustion for single target damage. If you haven't tried this spec in dungeons yet, I'd highly recommend it. It is so much fun. You are literally a glass cannon. The next spec we're going to look at is a raiding spec. Now this is a Winter's Chill support spec. At least one mage in the raid should have this spec, because Winter's Chill is going to buff up all other Frost Mage in the raid. You're basically taking all the juicy single target frost damage spells with Winter's Chill and then going into Arcane for Arcane Concentration and Arcane Meditation, which really help with your mana. The next spec is the main raiding spec for Frost enjoyers. This spec utilizes Arcane for Arcane Power and Presence of Mind, while using good massive damage from Ice Shards and improved Frostbolt. This is the go-to spec for Molten Core because of the boss's resistances, and if you're looking for one spec to set and forget, this is a very good spec to have, and it's very easy for a new player to master. The final spec we're going to look at is Raid Fire. Now I know what you're thinking, you're absolutely crazy! This is phase 1 of Molten Core, why would you go in with Fire? Well, this time around we have dual spec, which completely changes everything. As I'll cover later on in the guide, there are certain bosses you can absolutely go Fire for and will do a lot more damage than Frost. That's why we're covering Fire in this guide. So if you utilize dual spec properly, you're going to do absolutely tons of damage. This is a pretty standard Fire build. We're taking Elemental Precision from Frost, completing out the Fire tree as you would expect, and then going into Arcane for Arcane Concentration and 2 out of 3 Arcane Meditation. Fire is extremely strong in Classic. Don't get it twisted, don't listen to the hate. The reason that Frost is so popular is because of the boss's resistances in Molten Core and Blackwing Lair. Later on, Fire does come out of its shell and absolutely destroys everything. So yeah, if you've got dual spec, you'll absolutely want to have Fire as an off spec, and we'll cover more on the bosses later in this guide. All the builds will be linked in the description, so you can look at them more closely from there. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. The next thing we're going to look at is stats and how you can determine what is an upgrade and what is not. The first thing I want to mention is about hit rating. It's a common misconception that the most important thing is to be hit capped above all else. I think this mindset comes from retail, but anyway, actually, it's not the most important thing. The best way to explain stats and understand upgrades is to break them down into equivalency points. These do change slightly depending on your gear, but I'd recommend following these points for phase 1. Now I'm going to explain this as best as I can. Basically, 1% of spell hit is worth 11.69 spell damage, and 1% of crit is worth 7.62 spell damage. 1 spell damage is worth 0.16 intellect. So what you would do is use the above points to work out if an upgrade is actually an upgrade. For example, if something has 10 spell damage and 1% hit, this is better than an item with 21 spell damage. The hit cap is 16%, so we can get up to 10% from gear. After that, 1% of hit becomes worth nothing. You can use websites like 60 Upgrades to use these points to compare gear sets and damage, but we'll cover that more in the best in slot part of the guide. So let's quickly go through the Molten Core boss's fire resistance after Curse of Elements has been applied. The first thing to note is Baron-Geddon and Ragnaros are completely fire immune, and both Gehennis and Golimag have over 125 fire resistance. So these 4 bosses are the main reason everyone goes Frost in phase 1 of Classic. However, the other 6 bosses have just 24 fire resistance, so with dual spec, actually we have an option to use fire spec as a second spec. Running simulation spreadsheets, fire does a lot more DPS on these bosses, so it'll be interesting to see. So for this reason, I'm including fire talents and gear on this guide as an option to use on some of these bosses. It's also debatable that fire might be better for AoE on trash than frost. The only difference is any elementals are of course immune to fire. Next, we're going to look at some Pre Raid BiS options. Because of dual spec, what I'll do is show you the absolute Pre Raid BiS options for both fire and frost, but then I'll also show you an option that is from dungeons and has raw spell damage rather than a specific school like Frost. So if you're a more casual player, you can just stick to one set of gear and set it and forget it, and not have to worry about buying any of these crazy items like Freezing Band. So this is the absolute best pre-BiS for Frost Mage in Phase 1. We've got the green Frozen Wrath head. We've got the Star of Mysteria from Stratholme Living. The Boreal Mantle from BRD. The Archivist Cape of Frozen Wrath from Strat. The Robe of the Archmage. This one you have to craft yourself through tailoring. The Flameweave Cuffs of Frozen Wrath. This is from Blackrock Depths. The Witchblade from Scholomance. The Drakestone of Frozen Wrath from the Sunken Temple. Hands of Power from Lower Blackrock Spire. Bangfox Sash from the Blackrock Depths. The Sky Shroud Leggings from the Lower Blackrock Spire. The Green Master's Boots of Frozen Wrath. 2 Freezing Bands. The Briarwood Reed from Upper Blackrock Spire. The Eye of the Beast, which is from a quest that ends in Upper Blackrock Spire. And a Green Wand of Frozen Wrath. Now this is the absolute best, but as you can see, some of these items are going to cost an absolute fortune. So you can wait for the budget set in a moment. Now we're going to look at the best fire pre-BiS. Now of course, if you're running both specs, you would have this gear in your inventory to quickly swap in and out. We've got the Eye of Flame on the head, which is a world drop. The Star of Mysteria on the neck. We've got the Boreal Shawl on the shoulders. Now there is green ones of Fiery Wrath on here, but I haven't seen them in the game yet, so I'm not entirely sure if they are. If you do see them, of course, get them. Otherwise, just get the Boreal Shawl. For the cloak, we've got the Mage Flame Cloak. This gives 10 fire resistance and 21 fire damage, perfect for Molten Core. For the chest, it's the Robe of the Archmage. For the bracers, it's the Flameweave Cuffs of Fiery Wrath from Blackrock Depths. For the weapon, it's the Flarethorn from Blackrock Depths. Then we've got the Drakestone of Fiery Wrath from the Sunken Temple. We've got the Inferno Gloves from Tailoring. The Master's Belt of Fiery Wrath. And the Master's Leggings of Fiery Wrath. So these green ones, whichever version you can get. The boots, we've got the Fire Striders. For the ring, it's the Flaming Band of Intellect. But there's a number of these that you can get with the 24 spell damage on. So make sure you get those ones. But obviously, if you can get the one with the Intellect, that's going to be the best version. The Songstone of Ironforge, which is from the quest in Blackrock Depths, where you save the princess. The Briarwood Reed from Upper Blackrock Spire. The Eye of the Beast from Upper Blackrock Spire. And the Pyrrhic Wand from Blackrock Depths. Now finally, for the set which doesn't have any specific spell power, most of these can be obtained from dungeons, and I'll show you some options for the BOEs as well. So the Crimson Felt Hat from Stratholme, the Star of Mysteria from Stratholme, the Boreal Shawl from Scholomance, the Spritecaster Cape from Blackrock Depths, the Robe of the Archmage. The alternative to this using frost spells is Freezing Lich Robes. Otherwise, the next best is the Robe of the Magi. The Arena Wrist Guards, the Witchblade from Scholomance, the Spirit of Aquamentus, this is from a quest that starts in Ungoro, the Hands of Power from Lower Blackrock Spire, Bamfox Sash from Blackrock Depths, Sky Shroud Leggings from Lower Blackrock Spire, the Omnicast Boots from Blackrock Depths, Maiden's Circle, which is a BOE, it's very rare. If you can't find this, Don Maurizio's Band of Domination is also very good, or the Cyclopene from Blackrock Depths. The Songstone of Ironforge, Briarwood Reed from Upper Blackrock Spire, the Eye of the Beast from the Upper Blackrock Spire, and the Bone Creeper Stylus from Scholomance. So this is a very good set if you don't want to stick to a specific school of magic. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out. Maybe fire is very good on all of the other bosses. We'll have to wait and see, but this is a good option if you just want to go between each spec. Now let's look at the best in slot gear for Frost. We've got the Arcanist Crown that drops from Gar, the Choker of the Fire Lord from Ragnaros, the Boreal Mantle from Blackrock Depths, the Archivist Cape of Frozen Wrath from Stratholme, the Robe of the Archmage, The Arcanist Bindings, this is BOE and drops in Molten Core. The Azure Song Mage Blade from Golimag, this is a very good weapon. The Drakestone of Frozen Wrath from the Sunken Temple. The Hands of Power from Lower Blackrock Spire. The Mana Igniting Cord, which drops from a bunch of bosses in Molten Core. The Neverwind Pants, which drops from Ragnaros. The Arcanist Boots from Lucifron. 2 Rings of Spell Power, these drop from multiple bosses. The Briarwood Reed from Upper Blackrock Spire. The Talisman of Power, which drops from multiple bosses as well. And then your green Frozen Wrath Wand. And then for the Phase 1 Fire Best in slot, we've got the Eye of the Flame Still, the Choker of the Fire Lord from Ragnaros, the Arcanist Mantle from Molten Core, the Mage Flame Cloak, the Robe of the Archmage, the Arcanist Bindings, now these are BOE but you can get them in the raid as well, the Azure Song Mage Blade, the Drakestone of Fiery Wrath, the Gloves of the Hypnotic Flame, the Mana Igniting Cord, the Neverwind Pants, the Arcanist Boots, 2 Rings of Spell Power, Briarwood Reed, Eye of the Beast and the Pyric Wand. Okay, rotations in Classic are very easy. If you are the Winter's Chill Mage, then you will literally just cast Frostbolt and nothing else. For the Arcane DPS Frost Mage, it's just about when to use your Arcane Power and Presence of Mind. If there's a specific burn phase, then save Arcane Power. Otherwise, just use it early and use Presence of Mind just after when Arcane Power fades to get an extra Frostbolt in. If the boss is going to die before you can land your final Frostbolt, then use Fire Blast or Cone of Cold to finish them instead. Same if you have to move for a mechanic, then use Fire Blast if the boss isn't immune. For AoE damage, you will just cast Blizzard. For fire, it depends on the fight length. For the most part, you'll be pre-casting Pyroblast, and then it depends how long the fight will go on. If it's not going to be a short fight, then it's worth stacking your improved Scorch. Then you'll want to pop your Combustion and start spamming Fireballs. If it's going to be a short fight, then just use Fireballs with Combustion straight away, as improved Scorch won't bring as much value. Again, if you have to use for mechanics, or to finish the boss, you can use Fire Blast or Blast Wave. For AoE, you want to gather up the mobs and use Flame Strike and Blast Wave for massive damage. Now to run through the consumables and buffs. I do have a spreadsheet in the description that is showing all the information on the current consumables and buffs, and I'll do my best to update this as and when things occur. But basically what we'll want to go for is the Flask of Supreme Power, which is going to give us 150 spell damage for 2 hours, and this one persists through death since it is a flask. We got the Major Troll's Blood Potion, gives us 20 health per 5 seconds, lasts for 1 hour. This just helps out our healers a little bit. The Greater Arcane Elixir, this is going to give us 35 spell damage for 1 hour. We've got the Elixir of Firepower, which gives us 10 fire damage for 30 minutes. This is great for fire spells, since fire spells will go off the fire damage if it's higher than spell damage. Then we have the Elixir of Frost Power. This currently isn't in the game, but it should be coming soon with the Winter's Veil event, so it should be coming in the next few months. I'll update the spreadsheet once it does. And we have the Greater Fire Protection Potion. This absorbs fire damage. It's really good. It helps our healers out a lot, especially on these Molten Core fights. It has a 1 hour duration. It does trigger the potion cooldown, so if you use this, then you can't use your mana potion. So what you should do is just pre-cast it before the fight. It does mean you can double dip as well if it's a really intensive fight. You've got your fire protection potion. If you do notice it comes off, you can pop another one, but like I said, it does trigger the potion cooldown, so you won't be able to use your mana potion. Our food buff is going to be the Night Fin Soup. This gives us 8 mana per 5 seconds for 10 minutes. We've got Rumsey Rum Black Label. This is from fishing. Gives us 15 stamina for 15 minutes. It's separate from the food buff. This isn't the most important consumable, but it is nice to have. We've got the Major Mana Potion, which restores mana. It's our go-to battle potion. So basically what that means is it's the most important potion we're going to use. We would use this unless we have to use the fire protection potion for some reason, or if we have to use a free action potion, as they all do share a cooldown. Then we have the free action potion, which makes you immune to stun and slows. It does trigger the potion cooldown as I just explained, but it is used on some bosses and in niche scenarios it's very good to use. There is a couple more consumables I have to add on here, but by the time you're seeing this video I probably would have updated the spreadsheet, so just keep an eye on the spreadsheet in the description. I'll keep it up to date as much as possible. Now onto the buffs. We have the Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer, the Onyxia World buff. This gives us 10% crit for 2 hours. It can be booned. You've got the War Chief's Blessing, which gives 300 health and 10 mana per 5 seconds for 1 hour. You've got the Fellwood buff, which is the Songflower Serenade. It gives us 5% crit and 15 stats, which lasts for 1 hour and it can be booned. Lastly, this is a min-max one for Frost Mage. We've got the BFD buff, which gives 5 intellect, 5 spirit and 15 frost spell damage. You collect it from inside BFD clicking the Shrine of Gelihast just next to the Murloc boss. At level 60 you don't really aggro anything in there, so you can just literally run in and grab it. It can't be booned as it is like a debuff, but you can log out with it, so it's absolutely fine. Again, as I said, I'll update this spreadsheet as much as possible, so all the information you will need will be in there. You can see here I've got the Blessing of Black Fathom on. It appears like a debuff, but it increases your frost damage by 15, so it's pretty good. I was going to go over all my add-ons in here, but what I'm going to do is add them to the spreadsheet and give a little bit of detail about them, and I will do an add-ons video in the future at some point, so yeah. Finally, I just want to give a shout out to Twizzles from the Mage Discord. He's helped me out on a few little things in this video, so a huge thank you to you. If you aren't in the Mage Discord already, you'll want to join in there. All in all, Mage is looking fantastic for this phase. We can mix Fire up and Frost, so it's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be interesting to see which bosses we can use Fire the most and what comes out on top. And remember to keep an eye on the spreadsheet in the description so I can update this guide as and when needed. Thank you for watching, guys, and have a lovely day.